Hey, what's up everyone? Maury Croston here. Thanks again for signing up for our 5 ways to improve your speed. If you are just getting this and actually signed up to get this PowerPoint a few months ago, I've actually did this probably about a couple years ago now, so you might have signed up for this a while ago, but I wanted to make a video to be able to go a little bit more in depth into really some of the things that we're talking about within the slide. I want to start off and really kind of apologize in some way in not keeping this as up to date as I probably should have. When I was looking back, I recently had a few people go and get this PowerPoint, access to this PowerPoint, sign up for the PowerPoint, and I realized that this needs to be updated. This needs to really be improved. And so with this presentation, this will be an updated version. We'll also send over the PowerPoint as well, so you're able to take a look at that and really just get an understanding of how to improve your speed. Really get into the 5 ways, and we'll get a little bit more in depth into it. We'll hop right into the presentation. I don't want to waste any of your time here. And the big 5 that we went into now, kind of again made a bit of a change here, is going to be strength, coordination, power, range of motion, and technique. And we'll get a little bit more in depth into all 5. Every athlete wants to be able to have a good understanding of how well they're able to do each of these and really be able to differentiate between what could be and would be the biggest thing to improve overall. Typically, when working with athletes, especially guys that are able to really compete at a high level or have a good degree of success within their sprinting, the strength ends up not being a huge area of concern or potentially a huge area that needs to improve. Now, with that being said, there can be areas that need to improve strength-wise with somebody that has, let's say a 400-pound squat. But if in general, if you're able to squat over 400 pounds, then you should have the strength within the hamstrings, glutes, things like that, in order to run in an elite time, but ends up not having the proper coordination or maybe range of motion or maybe technique, ends up being probably a bigger thing to be able to address. Same type of thing with coordination, right? Like there's a lot of people that have coordination when doing certain drills, maybe a 5-10-5, or maybe even out of the start, have good coordination in being able to get from 0 to 10 meters and really struggle with the last 40 meters of 100 or the last 20 meters, or same type of thing that happens within the 40. And so what we want to be able to do is really break down all 5 of these areas and give you a great understanding of how can we be as effective as we can at being able to really match these and improve on these 5 areas. So first one is going to be strength. I'm going to try not to read everything right off the screen here, but this one is a good one. So it's basically the ability to overcome more weight physically. Big thing with this, use weights, bands, sleds. There's a lot of ways to be able to improve strength. Have the structure, right? So you want to have a program that you're following. You don't want to just necessarily go in there and be lifting random exercises or doing random exercises or progressing in a random fashion in order to really maximize speed. And this obviously is going to differentiate between an individual compared to a team, right? When I'm in a team setting, then we're going to have a lot more of the traditional type of exercises that are available, just because it's hard to be able to really individualize it for each person. But you want to be able to have some degree of structure of when is it that we're trying to be able to peak, when is it that we want to be able to see people get strong, and when is it that we're going to take some of the weight off, or times that we're going to quote unquote deload. And the strength isn't really as important as some of the technique and addressing parts of the body that can help us with things like endurance or coordination, things like that. Take weightlifting seriously. The technique is important. I see people all the time that are putting more of a emphasis on the weight, how much is being lifted, instead of quality of the lift. And I think that ends up being a big mistake, especially when it comes to sprinting, because when you're working on the start, it's really important to understand how are we taking those first 3 steps, those first 5 steps. And if we don't have the right range of motion within the hips and within the spine, then that could end up really playing a pivotal role in what ends up happening within your start. So common errors that I see, or common problems that I see with people that put a big emphasis on improving the strength, is when they're striking the ground, not having the ability to control foot strike or not being in a good position at foot strike, right? Like really overemphasizing having the knees out, really overemphasizing having the toes out because of what's happening within the squat. Another big thing is not being able to get into good hip flexion, not getting the knee up to the hip height, especially again out of the squat. Another big thing is not having good range of motion through the lumbar spine or through the mid back, again, because of the squat. So we want to be able to understand why are we doing certain weights, and again, take the technique very, very seriously. Another thing here, ability to be resilient, to overcome, right? You have to be able to overcome challenge and overcome resistance, overcome the weight, and really challenge yourself mentally to be able to get certain degrees of uncomfortable within a training session. So we want to make sure that when we're going and working out, we're not just going and doing exercises that are easy to do. We want to be challenging ourselves with what it is that we're doing and really being able to improve off of obvious or glaring weaknesses within our body. Don't be intimidated by challenges or resistance, and really builds up that ability to change, that ability to grow, that ability to adapt and improve and make it so your muscles are able to do the same. If you end up not challenging strength, then it really makes it difficult for you to see significant progress over a period of time because you're not able to really properly adapt the muscles. Your muscles don't have the necessary operating system to be able to see, again, consistent change, right? So if you're somebody that doesn't work out consistently or doesn't challenge their body to improve in their strength consistently, then it's a lot harder for your body to understand when you start lifting weights or when you start challenging your speed and try to improve your speed, how that is going to properly translate into sprinting, and also how to be able to recover properly, right? When you challenge yourself from a strength perspective, it really makes a big difference when it comes to some of the important parts of understanding recovery and how to most effectively recover. Another big thing here is consistency, right? Consistently train the body. Have rest periods, right? You have to be able to understand when we need to rest. A good rule that I followed growing up is that within every 12 months of working out, every 12-month cycle, you should have 4 weeks of uninterrupted rest. And I think that is really, really important for youth and younger athletes. So every 12 months, within that 12 months, within that 365 days, there should be 4 weeks or 28 days of uninterrupted rest where you're just resting, you're just recovering, you're just letting your body grow and improve. And then just have the discipline and the ability to stick to the plan. It's important to understand that the plan is what's going to get you there. So what you want to be able to do is make changes to the plan that you're doing, not changes to the discipline, right? You want to have the discipline, build the discipline. The plan is where potentially make changes, but when you're working out and how long you're going to be working out and things like that, you want to be able to stick to the plan the best you can, build the confidence over a period of time. So what happens when you start to be able to do this, when you stick to a plan and you have a regimen and you make consistent action, you take consistent action, is you start to build the confidence necessary to really see long-lasting changes within your body, within your way of really presenting yourself in a wide range of different things, right? So there's huge improvements that happens when it comes to strength, not only within the body. And that's really an important thing to understand. Is I'm trying to make it so you understand the mental part of training, and that how you are able to improve how you connect with yourself and your ability to improve and have strength within your character and within you as a human being comes from being able to have a consistent regimen of building your strength. When you have a strong body, it really has a big impact on building a strong mind. It's a lot more difficult to have a strong mind. I've seen it. I've seen people that have success that do not have strong bodies, that do not put a lot of time into that part of themselves, but it's a lot more difficult. I can't tell you firsthand, I never really went through it, but I know that the more I focus on my diet, my rest, my workout regimen, how often I'm working out, it just has such a great impact on my mental ability to connect with myself and just the feeling that I have with myself, that it's just super important to improve everything over a period of time. That all might not seem like it's really important, especially if you're younger and watching this, but over a period of time, it makes a difference. So if your skin is hydrated and working properly, and all the different parts of your body, the different systems within your body, the organs within your body are working in a functional way, in a cohesive way, it makes a difference in how you're going to be able to perform. When you have sickness, when you have infection, bacteria, then your body is putting time into fixing the issues within your organs or within your body or within your bloodstream or within your skin. Then that takes away from what you could do from a strength perspective. It takes away from the effort you can give when you're working out. It takes away from your mental focus and your ability to connect to what it is that you're doing, right? Because now you end up thinking about that. You end up thinking about your sickness. End up thinking about being tired. You end up thinking about whatever, why am I not feeling well? All these things make it so now the focus changes, right? We want to be able to concentrate on the focus and what is important now, what is important today, what's the goal, and really get consistent results within that specific goal, and don't have to teeter or don't have to think about other parts of our body or other things that are going on. Then we can really, again, positively impact performance. So coordination, ability comes from consistent training and practice, right? So consistency, discipline, confidence, those are three things that I'm talking about a lot. So the more you train something, the better and easier it becomes, right? So the more you work on your sprinting, the more you work on your block starts. The reason why all these top sprinters are constantly working on the block starts, because the more you train it, the more it becomes a rhythm and a pattern and just something that you do well. If you don't spend a lot of time training your start, you're not going to be able to see the same result. Expose yourself to uncomfortable movements and positions. So when it happens with coordination, what coordination is great is being able to have your body learn and understand adaptation. And adaptation is critical when it comes to developing in really anything. So not only do we want to be consistent in working on something like a start, we also want to put ourselves in a position where we're not just doing two-legged barbell squats all the time. We want to be challenging how are we doing different types of squats. We could do single leg, we could do TRX, we could use dumbbells, we could use kettlebells, we could use hex bars, we could use so many different ways to be able to challenge similar motions. But what it does is it makes it so your brain has to stay constantly stimulated in order to achieve the task that is at hand. And the more you could do that, the more you can get into different positions and try different types of workout methods, right? You don't have to only do sprinting. You could try yoga, you could do Pilates, you could do MMA, right? Like those types. Obviously you don't want to end up getting into a fight with somebody, but these types of movements, jiu-jitsu, these types of things, and understanding how to be able to utilize those movements to improve your speed can be effective ways to keep the brain stimulated and really keep your body in improving and adapting to a range of different challenges, which will help with coordination, which will help with timing, which will help with your ability to connect to all the different parts of your body. And yeah, great for keeping your brain active, right? The more your body and brain is active, the more connection that you build within your brain and your body, the better it's going to help with your speed and coordination. With coordination comes balance, body control. It's essential to when it comes to top speed, creating balance, right? So when you're running top speed, what you have to be able to do is you have to be in a position where you're generating large amounts of force into the ground, moving at a rapid rate, covering a lot of distance per step, and maintaining great control, great balance. When you end up losing balance, when you lose control, then that's when you start to slow down, is because it's a loss of control, it's a loss of efficiency, it's a loss of effectiveness when you are sprinting. So understanding body control and balance is critical when it comes to coordination and being able to control your overall performance. And this really goes into not only speed, but really everything. And with that, we'll go into timing. The big thing with timing is, and I talked about this a lot, like it's about the rhythm and how we're able to, when one arm is in extension, right back behind, the other leg is in extension, or when the hand is coming forward, that is when we're getting into toe off, and how well are we able to coordinate those hands and the legs, and where are our hands when our foot's coming off the ground, and when our foot strikes the ground, where is our the knee of our turnover leg, or the foot that is off the ground, the leg that's off the ground, the knee as we're striking the ground. So we want to be able to have an understanding of like, where do these markers need to be when we get to maximum hip flexion or 90 degree of hip flexion, where our knee's the same height as our hip. We want to be able to get that foot to be as much right underneath the knee as possible. These types of things are important important in being able to maximize top speed. So we want to be able to isolate and see, like, am I using my arms to be able to help me improve my turnover speed and my ground contact time and my ground contact force? Like, am I using my arms to help me in running faster, help me in accelerating, help me in improving my speed? Or am I off sync? Am I not using my arms properly? Am I not connecting to my body in the way that's going to make it so I can see improvement within my start, my transition, my top end speed? And if there are things that are off, how can I recreate that rhythm? How can I make it so I can get back on? And really being able to develop that body awareness and that correction, that ability to self-correct, that ability to see and understand a potential problem and be able to work on it and address it. And this goes into breathing, and having that breath work and being able to properly connect to that core. And because, like, when you can use your core correctly, that makes a big difference. Job of the core, the muscles of the core, the abs, the lower abs, the obliques, the lumbar spine, it's to really keep your QL. It's to keep your spine aligned. It's to keep your pelvis aligned. It's to control the pelvis. It's to make it so there's no unnecessary movements. It's to maximize the efficiency. And so you have to be able to have a strong core and great range of motion through the core and ability to have great rotation through the core. So there's all these different actions that are happening when you're sprinting that want to be happening in a very rhythmic way. And the best way to be able to create rhythm is through your breath and being able to connect through your breath. If you're not able to properly control how well you're able to utilize your lungs and how your lungs are expanding and contracting and the effectiveness of that, you're not going to be able to run as fast, and really you're not going to be able to be as strong, as powerful, as forceful. All those things are going to be impacted by how it is that you're breathing. When you try to do something with a lot of force behind it, you end up really putting a big stress on your diaphragm, which is one of the biggest core muscles as well as your overall breathing pattern. So the third way is going to be power. This one I go into different important parts of how to train power, right? And really it's the strength and force together, and really goes a lot into the timing of the strength. So when you talk about plyometric exercises, talking about like exercises that are happening fast, jumping, right? So when you're going through a squat, sometimes there can be, especially when you're lifting heavy weight, there could be a lot more time under tension. There could be a lot more time where you're going and you're loading and come back up. When you're jumping, those all have to be fast. It's really concentrating on how well we're able to create force or load into a particular part of our body and then utilize that load to really maximize maybe height, distance, your ability to control landing, right? That's another big thing is, in a part that I didn't mention here is just like the stretch shortening cycle, right? How when your muscle is stretching, right, it's going and lengthening, that's going to be a loading cycle. And then when it shortens, that's going to be a power production or power producing cycle. And really power is developing that stretch shortening cycle, which is a critical part of being able to run fast. Essentially, when your foot hits the ground, right, we're really maximizing the load and the stretch in a wide variety of different muscles, and then immediately transitioning back off the ground is how your body is going to be contracting, or how those muscles are going to be contracting, and essentially what it is that we are doing when it comes to, or how well we're able to do that, right, hit the ground and generate force and really utilize the force that we create into the ground to then get right back and rebound right back off the ground is a critical when you're getting into higher and higher speeds, and really when you first start, making it so where you're utilizing the ground to make it so you're accelerating, as well as making it so you are able to get to top speed and maintain top. So really having a great understanding of balance, control, landing, as well as force production, and that stretch shortening cycle all goes into power. Next one's going to be range of motion, and really, the important thing with this, flexibility is not range of motion, right? So just because you have a lot of, maybe you can do the splits, or maybe you can touch your toes. There's a lot of people that are in yoga, right, that do yoga that have a lot of range of motion. There's not anybody that practices yoga as like a yoga instructor that can beat me in a race. What happens when you have too much flexibility is it impacts the shortening, the stretch shortening cycle, right? We talked about stretch shortening cycle just now. So the stretch is yoga. The the stretch shortening is power production, right? So we have to be able to not only have the flexibility or the stretch, we also need to be able to understand how to utilize that stretch to then maximize and utilize the shortening of the muscle, which is really when you create power. So we want to be able to get to the ranges. Essentially what it's important here is just having the ability to achieve active ranges. When you see somebody, again, going into yoga, just because you practice yoga doesn't mean that you don't run stiff. You see people all the time that are running stiff. It doesn't have to do with their range of motion or, potentially lack thereof. It just has a lot to do with the timing and the coordination and understanding how to generate force within the body. When you have flexibility, but you don't have force production, what you do is you are off coordination or off rhythm when you're generating force because your body's just only set up to or optimized to stretch really well instead of being able to generate the most amount of force. And many times the fastest athletes, the most forceful athletes in the world are also some of the least flexible. So it's not necessarily about range of motion, it's much more about active ranges. How well can we achieve ranges when we are at top speed or when we are running? So this is where understanding, again, some of that timing ends up being important, understanding when I need to be at what positions, right? How well can I get my heel to my butt? How much knee flexibility do you have, right? How much essentially ability you have to activate within the hamstrings, get full activation within the hamstrings. I see guys like Noah Lyles have such a great ability to get their heel all the way up to their butt. That's full activation of the hamstring. Many people have a hard time getting that full activation of the hamstring. I know I struggle with it on my left side, especially when I'm sprinting. So it's really something that you want to be able to address and really want to be able to work on is being able to achieve active ranges. We see people all the time that have ineffective positions within their knee or don't get great hip flexion when they're sprinting. So their knees are too low, right? Or even when they're starting, right? They don't get those knees up and through. That's going to impact your ability to generate as good a force into the ground and really maximize force production. We see people that don't have great range when their foot's striking the ground. They have a hard time in controlling and maintaining extension or plantar flexion within the ankle at foot contact. Range of motion, right? Being able to achieve and get to certain ranges is critical. There's a lot that goes into here. This is just really talking about when we're at different phases, what should we be expecting? So when you're at the start, at the transition and the top end speed, you're going to have different positions within the body. The start, you're going to have more of a flexed lumbar spine. You're going to have more of a flexed thoracic spine. We're going to have more extension in the shoulder, but limited flexion. When we're getting into transition, now we're starting to extend a lot more within the lumbar spine, extend more within the hip. We're going to be getting more, really at the start too, we're going to be getting more lateral tilt in the pelvis, more rotational tilt within the pelvis. The spine starting to extend, the shoulder flexion starts to increase and extension decreases. We get to top end speed. Now we're going to be getting really what our maximum ability to get lumbar spine flexion extension looks like when we're sprinting, and also simultaneous large ranges of hip flexion and extension. How much separation are we able to get between our femurs, our front leg femur and our back leg femur? How much are we able to, or how well are we able to achieve ankle flexion and really dorsiflexion and plantar flexion? So being able to really maximize those ranges. I see limitations there all the time, and it really impacts your sprinting and your thoracic spine. When you get into max hip flexion and you initiate that pull into the ground and you pull your leg to be able to get that nice height when your foot hits the ground, what we want to be able to see is we want to see some degree of thoracic flexion, right? So your mid spine kind of collapses when that happens because of how much core activation we're utilizing to stabilize the pelvis as we're creating that pull. But we don't want to end up losing too much position within our upper body where now our head comes way out in front of our foot contact. We need to be able to keep ourselves upright. So there's extension and flexion going on within the thoracic spine really simultaneously. The thoracic spine is your mid back, your lumbar spine is your low back. There's a ton of improvements that can be happening within your lower body, and I go into a lot of information on some of the videos within my channel if you want to look more into that. Technique, the only way to beat great genetics is going to be great technique. And when it comes to great technique, there is such a wide variety of ways to understand efficiency, right? There's only going to be one fastest person in the world within a 4-year span that wins the Olympic gold medal. That doesn't mean that the person that comes in fourth doesn't have great technique. It just means that the person that comes in first has a great combination of genetics and technique and really effectively utilizes both. Having the approach to quality is really most important. Let's understand, what does great technique look like? I think that the more, as an athlete, the more that you understand technique and effective sprinting mechanics, the better it's going to be for you and your ability to run at a high level. Making it so you have ways to measure your technique and understand if your technique's improving. I talk about the 10-meter fly here. I talk about ground contact time, top speed, and utilizing video. Key to improving technique is making a habit of only 1 to 2 things, right? So don't try to change 5 things in your technique, right? You want to be able to make only 1 to 2 changes, but make that a habit, right? Be very specific in, I'm trying to get better here. I'm going to keep on working on getting better here until I see the results, and don't get caught up in, continually trying to make improvements or adjustments within different parts of your running. Like, really focus on 1 to 2 things and get better there, and then separate it. What I was going to talk about here is just like, get a coach, right? If you can, utilize a coach. I think it's great to get third-party feedback and what ends up being most important. You don't necessarily have to utilize every single thing that the coach is saying. Everybody is going to make mistakes. We're all human, right? We don't know what we don't know. And so what makes sense, then utilize. If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't effectively connect to your brain and your body, then it's not for you, right? I talk about that all the time with the people that I work with, and I'm always trying to bring out different ways of saying the same thing. I'm very big on communication. Like, how am I saying what it is that I'm saying to make it so it can most effectively be utilized within the athlete? If I don't think about that, if I'm not aware of that, then I'm not going to be able to work with a wide variety of different athletes, and therefore won't be able to get the best results within the athlete. So not what works for me isn't going to work for everybody else. There's maybe certain people that it works for, certain people that it doesn't work for. So again, just trying to be able to differentiate the communication within yourself, and again, being able to get that third-party feedback, and really breaking this up too. When you're getting your technique, understand there's a start, there's a drive phase, there's a top end speed. There's different techniques for all of it. There's different ways to be able to do all of it. Depending on your height and your body type makes a big difference. Also, you want to be able to measure the 3 critical phases: your ground contact time, your turnover speed, or the foot off the ground, distance per step, right? And utilize this information, whether you're getting it through video, GPS, there's a lot of different ways to be able to do it. Utilize that information in the gym to improve speed. We're not trying to go to the gym to make it so you are stronger, unless you're trying to be an Olympic weightlifter, right? Unless you're trying to compete at a high level when it comes to strength. Really what we're trying to do when we are going to the weight room or going to the gym is improve our speed. So what can we do that will directly correlate to improve speed, and what is it specifically we are measuring, right? What is not measured does not improve. So be effective with your time, be effective with what it is that you're doing, and I think that's going to be the best way to improve your speed. So again, going back to the beginning, this ends up being the 5 ways to improve your speed, right? So 5 different techniques, 5 different areas to be able to be aware of when it comes to sprinting: strength, coordination, power, range of motion, technique. Strength is a lot of times goes into a lot younger of an athlete, somebody that is, maybe not fully built out and has some potential areas to improve within the lower body, upper body, things like that. Most people are going to need to improve coordination, range of motion, power in the straight shortening cycle, technique. I don't want to take out the idea that there is degrees of strength that will come from improved range of motion. There is more power that can come from better coordination and better timing. There is improvement within the technique that comes from range of motion and strength and really all of this. So 5 ways to improve your speed does not mean that one of these can be weak. It means that we want to have an equal opportunity to utilize all 5 of these areas, and really understanding within the technique, I would say, is probably the most important, because based off of what we see within the technique will give us an understanding of where within these other 4 we need to make some improvements within, and then those will also correlate into others. So again, if you improve your coordination, a lot of times that can improve your timing. That can make an improvement on your technique and your power and your strength and really your range of motion. And same thing with range of motion. You see something wrong with your technique that makes it so it's like, okay, let's improve our active range of motion. Sometimes we need to do that by improving certain strength, certain muscles, maybe your hip hip flexors, right? Strengthening your hip flexors will make it so now you can get more hip flexion while your other leg is in maximum extension, hip extension, lumbar extension, and being able to get, again, that separation of the femur. That will create more strength within that lower body. It will, and within the hip flexors, obviously, will achieve greater ranges of motion and therefore improve technique. It could also make an impact on timing and power. So these things are all coordinated together. This is why these are the 5 most important ways. It's not, one way. It is all 5 being cohesive and utilizing everything at your disposal to make it so you are, again, seeing measurable progress. You should be seeing measurable progress in reasonable time. Great Jim Rohn quote, probably the greatest quote I got from Jim Rohn to help me in improving my own ability to improve as a coach, as an athlete, and an overall business. So again, the quote is making measurable progress in reasonable time. So really put an effort in being able to do that within your speed. If you have any questions, you can respond to this email. Would be happy to be able to answer them for you. Would be happy to be able to help. If you haven't joined our speed program or gotten an email about our speed program, then or maybe even have interest about it, would be happy to answer any questions and really get into how we can help you in improving moving forward within your speed and really utilizing these 5 areas to make it so you can maximize your overall performance. Thank you for watching this, and thank you for submitting to actually get the 5 ways to improve your speed. I hope this helps, and we look forward to working with you in the future.